Hey there, We Can't Wrestle podcast listeners. If you haven't noticed, we have switched our server to Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple, and many, many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast all in one place. So go ahead, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Highly recommended by me and everybody else here at the We Can't Wrestle podcast.
You're listening to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Now it's time for our host, Nate Manson.
Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to episode 133 of the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Nate Maxon, your host, here with you, along with, going to shake it up a little bit this time, Archie Mitchell.
What's up, everybody?
And, of course, my brother Aaron is here.
Hello.
And this week, we got two words for you. Suck it. We're going to be discussing the Attitude Era, the good and the bad of the WWF Attitude Era this week on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. When I'm formulating my thoughts, I kept trying to stick to WWF, not go into WCW, because we're not talking about the Monday Night Wars. But WCW will probably come up a little bit because, Vince Russo is going to come up, et cetera, et cetera.
I have one WCW.
And I know Aaron had posted in our Facebook group for some listeners to give their suggestions. We'll go through those as well. Before we start the show this week, I want to thank everyone that is so far listening to WrestleNet Radio. Listenership is going much better than I thought it would for the first few weeks. So keep getting the word out, sharing the page. People are sharing the page. People are sharing the station. I'm really excited about this. Wrestling Talk 24/7.
The We Can't Wrestle Network.
Yes, the We Can't Wrestle Network.
And if any Apple executives are listening to this,
can
you push the damn app through?
I'm gonna send another nasty gram this week to Apple. You can download the WrestleNet Radio app in the Google Play Store.
Yes.
If you do have an Apple phone, though, there is a link on the page, and I put it in our Facebook group, that you can actually click that link, open it in your Safari, and then mark that as a bookmark. And I guess for right now, that'll have to act as your app. But Archie's show debuted this week. If you smell what the Arch is cooking.
Yes.
And did very well.
Well, thank you for that. I was a little nervous, but I tried to just make it more fun and off the cuff as opposed to just being regulated. And, I had notes, but I didn't really stick to all of them.
Well, and not to mention, you're like Joey Styles, man. You did it solo. It's hard to go solo sometimes.
It is. But
without being able to feed off of someone else.
Aaron and I were talking about possibly doing a show together about Smoky Mountain, and I'm interested to do that. But when it comes to, newer product, and this is not to be selfish or anything, I like to be a little bit more solo so that I could just get my points out. Because when I'm with one of you guys, we go 4 hours, and then it's like, okay, now what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I didn't want my debut show to be, oh wow, Archie's still going on hour 3? What's going on here?
Well, then and you're like, oh my God, would Nate shut up about Omega, for Christ's sake?
No. Omega shit to bed this week. That promo was horrible.
Oh, it was awful. Well, not that I expected any less when I had Omega and Orange Cassidy on the same screen at the same time.
This no disrespect to Jake Roberts, but Kenny Omega sound more coked out than Jake Roberts ever did this past week on Dynamite. He sounded like he was high, drunk, and didn't know what the hell he was supposed to be talking about. And all you see is Tony Schiavone going, okay, come on, let's hurry it up. Come on, guys. Move it
along, little doggy.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, I have a surprise for you guys before we start the Attitude Era talk.
Oh.
I have been trying to work. I've been thinking about working, or not thinking about, but every time I'm going to work this into the show, something happens, I forget about it, whatever. For Christmas this past year, my daughter bought me for Christmas, because she knows I like collecting wrestling things, no matter how silly it is or whatever, I want it. She bought me the official WWE cookbook for Christmas, all right?
My children said they want to get me that for Father's Day. I said, no, please don't do that.
What I want to do right now is because some of these recipes or some of these dish names are punny, Punny, and I think you guys might get a kick out of some of them. So I'm gonna go through the cookbook here and read you some of these. I think some of them are gonna pop you. Okay. Are you ready, Aaron?
Sure.
This is fun. All right. You'll have a wrestler. If you can't see it, folks, but you'll have like a wrestler, and there's a theme. You know, this wrestler has a dish named after him or whatever. So in the breakfast, we have the Big Boss Ham Steak Donuts. How about Baquishta? Bakishta?
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Degeneration eggs. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. How about biscuits and gravy boy Smith?
All right, that in the bag. That I like. That was good. The first two were really bad, but that one was good.
Is there an Owen Tart?
I don't know. I haven't got that far
Owen
yet.
Tart. Oh my God.
Let's see here. I'm just. Let's see here. Salsa Banks.
Okay.
I'm gonna put some sound effects in this, like womp womp
That
womp.
that
womp.
one was a little racist because she's Spanish. I think she's half Spanish, so that's kind of bad.
Ayatollah of Capicola melt for Chris
God.
Jericho. How about Soup Lex City?
How about you keep going?
Yeah, how about keep going?
Prawn Michaels. I'm going to leave the silence in. That's funny. Hey, Stone Cold has some oh hell yams for you.
That was bad.
Let me see here. Randy Cornton. Michael Coleslaw.
Oh God.
Sergeant Slaughter, Slawter. Sergeant Slaughter.
So there's two types of coleslaw?
Yes, two types of slaw. Andre the Gyro.
That was bad.
Braun Stroganoff.
Okay.
Let's see here. Jerry the King Crab Lawler.
Nah.
I like the I swear there are some other funny ones in here. Let's see. Rikishi pork buns. That's not funny. Chicken rock pie. Brutus the Barber beefcakes. Yes, they're in here. There are Brutus the Barber.
Well, I know one thing.
beefcakes
Aaron
in
won't be
here.
coming over for dinner if you're cooking.
Yes. Let me see. Still going through here. Sorry. I didn't prepare. I didn't do any bookmarks in the.
I was expecting like a Godfather and hoe cakes or something, something like.
Yeah, no, they don't touch on the Attitude Era much in this. This is
well, at least
for the family.
Let's see.
Truffle H, Ric Flair's Whoopie Pie.
Okay.
Okay.
How about Hulk Hogan's? I can't believe it's not brother.
Oh, I can't believe it's not brother.
Yeah, brother.
How about for a beverage, some Coffee Kingston or Ginger Mahal?
I like both. Okay.
I think that's all we got. All right. I had to go through some of them.
I'm going to text my wife tomorrow morning at like 6:30 a.m. Honey, can I get some coffee? Some coffee? She's going to be like, you motherfucker. No.
So I told my daughter at some point the cookbook was a part of the show, so I kept my promise as a father.
Why no like Hercules? Why no like Hercules?
Hercules. Maybe that's a mission we could go on. We could come up with 5 of our own recipes for the next show.
I like that.
Because we can be offensive with ours. WWE had to play it safe.
Well, the Sasha Banks one was pretty offensive to me.
That was one of the ones I actually found that Degeneration Eggs. I don't know why that got me. It's so simple, but it's funny. All right, guys. we've done the haphazard punny humor there. Let's get into the WWF.
How about a Barry
Windham?
Yeah, like a glazed ham with Barry Windham's name.
Barry Windham, yeah.
Yeah.
A Paul Berry pie.
oh yes.
Bruno San Martino and meatballs.
Not gay Bruno though.
Yeah, gay Bruno likes meatballs.
Not gay Bruno.
let's not go back into that debauchery.
No.
That shit went off the rails.
I feel bad because I'm the one that started it, and then it went from there, and then Chad just took it and ran with it.
When Chad, I think you were gone by the time we came up with that one. With the one, I think Chad came up with it, but Chad was like, after he listened to the episode, he said Barry Von Erich is gold, and I don't even remember the connotation of Barry Von Erich, but we were pretty bombed by the end of that.
What about Mr. T-Bone?
Mr. T-Bone,
and a side of he loves his mama fries. No, that night we recorded, my sinuses were killing me, and I took a Claritin. And Nate, about 20 minutes later, I was in space. I was just like, "Woo!"
You should have joined us because we were all in space by the time the show ended.
I'm sure it would have been funny, but like I couldn't move. I don't know why Claritin does that to me. It makes me feel like I took like an Oxycontin or something.
Anybody that hasn't listened to episode 132, go back and listen to it just to listen to the story that Chad tells about how King Kong Bundy broke his futon.
Wow.
King Kong Bundy broke his why do I want to keep saying tufon? What the fuck is a tufon, Nate? Anyway, futon. King Kong Bundy broke Chad's futon. All right. So
wait a minute, Nate. I got one.
Oh,
Rakishi fondue.
I got one.
Go ahead.
Meat.
Meat.
Oh shit! All right. The cookbook thing bombed as a beginning, but they can't all be 100%. Everybody.
Hey, it worked for me. I like that we get to make up our own.
Talking about the Attitude Era here, when do you guys say the Attitude Era started? Because if you look, a lot of people think
when did it officially start?
No.
Start in your mind.
They started. They officially kind of started it after WrestleMania 14, but in your mind, where did the Attitude Era start?
Can I say mine first?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To me, the Attitude Era started the night that Bret Hart pushed Vince McMahon on his ass.
Yeah. See, I mean, that's that's bullshit.
That shit never fucking happened before that.
Mm-hmm. Right. No, that's a good point. I somewhat agree with Aaron, but I guess you mentioned WrestleMania 14 and whatnot. I would say the night that Austin passed out to the sharpshooter with all the blood on his face and he just wouldn't quit was a sign of change because they weren't really letting a lot of blood fly back then. Right. You know, you could bleed, but they weren't letting a crimson mask get all over. And Austin had a crimson mask, so that was Vince's way of telling the fans at home, "We're going the whole way with it."
For me, the Attitude Era started in late August of 1995.
The Diesel promo? No, that's not the Diesel promo.
When we saw the first vignette for Gold Dust.
Yeah.
To me, that was kind of the. I know that isn't what they'd say. I know that's not what most people would say, but to me, that was the first time that Vince McMahon said, "Fuck it, let's do something a little edgy. We got to do something." You know, not that an androgynous character had never been around before. You had Adrian Street and like
Adonis.
But that pushing the envelope like that Goldust character did.
I mean, like during the promos when he was actually just, in front of the Hollywood sign, he wasn't really talking that badly. He was just, remarking old movies and doing.
But then
But when he debuted,
when he started that feud with Razor,
you
know, that was so to me. That's kind of it, and I can see where people would say, "Yeah, but it took another couple of years before it was really." But I really do think that
Goldust was the tipping point, though. Yeah,
that was and then into '96, you have the Austin 316 promo, and just the ball starts rolling, man, and we're off to the races. And I think, and we'll get into it a little deeper, but the early part of that, from '96 until probably the end of '98, to me, the Attitude Era jumps the shark in '99, but we'll get into that. All right. Yeah. So Aaron said he did like a top 6 and a worst 6, and I guess we'll kind of let that. If you want to, because my list really isn't very organized, Aaron. So if you want to, I didn't do a list per se. So if you want to start with, do you want to start with the good?
Sure.
And run down your thing there, and then we can kind of.
I love lists. It's a hobby of mine, and I'll just start right at the top. You said you want me to do best first, right?
Yeah, you can run down all 6 of them. We can talk. All
right. Well, number 1 was during the Attitude Era, and it is something that doesn't even exist now. Was everyone had something going on that makes sense?
Very true.
Like. When the music would hit and the dude would come out the chute, he had a reason for coming out of the chute.
Mm-hmm.
And it's gonna play into like a worse thing. That's the thing too with my list is there's things that are the best of it, but it also is the worst of it. But like in the Attitude, like Vince Russo and Ferrara, for everything that you want to say about those guys, and I know they had shitty ideas and they did hurt the business somewhat. But when they first got into it, man, they wanted to make sure that every single person on that roster had some reason for being on TV.
You're right about that. Yeah. I mean, like Steve Blackman had a storyline going on.
And, yeah, Russo said it before that he would go to Vince's house and, I mean, take Vince Russo for what you want, but he said he'd go to Vince's house and he'd say, what's going on with Austin? What's going on with The Rock? What's going on with Foley? What's going on with Taker? And then maybe a 5th whatever in there. And everybody else, they would just they'd have their list of 20 guys and they'd make sure something was going on with them. You know what I mean?
Right, right. And I think that to its credit, that's what kind of made the hardcore title a good point of the Attitude Era too, because there were 20, like Aaron said, there were 20 guys trying to get that belt off of whoever the 24/7 hardcore champion was. So right there you had, guys, right? Like today's 24/7 champion, it's a little fluky. If it wasn't for R-Truth, that thing wouldn't be as good as it is. But in the hardcore era when we had it, everybody had some Crash Holly, Hardcore Holly, Stevie Richards. There were guys running around the arena having decent matches for that belt. So yes, to Russo's credit, he deserves that credit for that.
And that's a good point. Like I was saying, like if Mike Lockwood was around now, he'd just be on 205 live and not have anything going on, and he'd be wrestling Ricochet or fucking Drew Gulak every week, and nobody would give a shit. But Vince Russo was like, "Hey, let's find something for Crash, the Hardcore Championship," and that Hardcore Championship had the potential to be really stupid, but they gave a guy something, and he went with it, and Crash made that fucking thing entertaining, and that doesn't exist anymore.
And I will touch on that a little bit on one of my lists or one of my little bullet points here. But what was next on your
on my list?
Yeah.
This is the only non-WWF thing from the Attitude Era that I put, and it was the original NWO, not like when it became like 50 guys. But the reason I put the original NWO on it is because the original NWO, more than anything else, forced Vince's hand.
Yeah, well, and that is okay. That is one of my. I will mark off here one of my positives or my good things of the Attitude Era. And that's where I said that I didn't mention WCW a lot because I tried to stick to WWF, but I think you're kind of getting to the same thing I am here, Aaron, was during that era, because of the Monday Night War, the wrestling companies were doing their best and trying hard to keep us watching their show. They wanted, like if I watch Raw today, I don't feel like Vince McMahon is trying to keep me as a viewer.
Nope.
In whether good or bad, and we'll get into some of the bad, whether good or bad, if you watch a Raw or a Nitro from the Monday Night War era, you can tell, again, whether it was crap or it was good, that wrestling company was trying to keep you as a viewer, watching that show for 2 hours every single week.
I agree. There's a show I watch on YouTube, Nate and Aaron, called Reliving the War. And this guy scores Raw versus Nitro, point for point. Mm-hmm. And now, because at this point in the show that he's watching, Nitro went to 2 hours. Raw is still only 1 hour. But he gives an unopposed point. Like, if Raw was starting, would he still keep watching Nitro, or would he flip over to Raw and watch the next hour of Raw? And that's what I think was what was good about it. It made you really want to pick and choose if you were going to keep watching or not on Monday nights, or were you going to even watch Nitro, or were you going to wait till the next morning on tape? And and then the best part about it was both companies would wait till the last 20 minutes of their show to tell you what was going to happen next week, so you'd want to be watching next week. Like, oh, we're going to have Macho Man versus the Giant on Nitro next week for the world title, or it's going to be Goldust versus Razor for the Intercontinental title on Raw. And you'd go, as a kid, because we were all teenagers back then, we'd go, damn, I better be watching Raw and Nitro next week.
Right.
Now it's like they tell you in the first 10 minutes of Raw, oh, next week it's going to be Drew McIntyre in a rematch with Braun Strowman, and everybody goes, again?
And see, the like, one of the reasons I put that on my list is because Eric Bischoff has said before that he was like, riding his wave, and these things are reversed, so I'm just prefacing that. Mm-hmm. But Bischoff said, like, he was riding his wave, and then they did the Tyson thing, and that made him go, whoa.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, gee, whoa. These guys are competition again.
Yeah, They're serious.
Yeah, like, this shit's serious. I honestly think, and he'll never say it because Vince isn't that. He's a type A personality, so he'd never say something like this. I think when Hogan turned and became a bad guy, Vince McMahon was probably like, "Whoa,
yeah,
oh, definitely.
These guys are doing something." You know, like does that make sense? Like, I think,
definitely.
I think Hogan turning was Vince's Bischoff's Tyson moment. You know what I mean? Like, okay, these guys are fucking.
They're serious.
Yeah, they're thinking outside the bun here. You know what I mean?
Well, if you look at both companies, Vince felt that Hogan couldn't get over anymore. Hulkamania had run its course, so he let him go. He went to WCW for 2.5 years. They tried the Hulkamania stuff. It wasn't getting Hogan over anymore. Fans were booing.
It was
so
awful.
What did they do? They turned Hogan heel.
Babyface Hogan in WCW was awful.
It was like reliving the 80s, but worse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was like the 80s without cocaine.
Right.
It was like a really good macaroni and cheese, but then you have to microwave it so some of the noodles get all crunchy, and it's that's a stupid analogy. I had really good macaroni and cheese tonight. I'm sorry.
Well, that's good. That's good. You got to give me the recipe then. The flip side of things is
it was the Drew McIntyre and cheese.
On the flip side, WCW
don't look at me like that.
Threw Steve Austin on his ass when Hogan got there, and Austin was floundering, and now he gets to WWE. Vince finally lets him do what the hell he wants, and Austin becomes the megastar there.
Yeah.
So, like Aaron said, you got Austin and Tyson, which was the oh shit moment for Bischoff. Hogan turning to the NWO was definitely the oh shit moment for Vince.
What's next on your list, Aaron, of positives from the Attitude Era?
It's 2 feuds in a row, and I know one of them is going to be on everybody's list, but I'm going to say Undertaker versus Kane.
Mm-hmm. The first
the first incarnation of
Yeah,
it.
the first incarnation of that feud is up there with Hogan and Savage as one of the greatest stories that WWE ever
Without a
told.
doubt.
Yes.
And they're still telling it to this day.
Well, I was about to say, as the years go on, it got a little convoluted. They ignored but that first, and yes, you're absolutely right. That first initial Kane Undertaker,
and that's what I was gonna say. That was that first incarnation, and I know a lot of people think the Artful Dodger is full of shit, and he like rewrites history, and he probably does because he's been taught by Vince. You know what I mean? But I firmly believe that when Bruce talks about the angle and everything that he thought of, like I think Bruce Pritchard is being factual when he's saying this is the idea I thought of and it was great, and it was great. And then when Vince Russo got his hands on it, it just became kind of convoluted.
Mm-hmm.
But the original like build up and it's also I'll give a little bit of leeway on the fact that it kind of got convoluted because I don't think they knew what they had when they had it, if that makes sense. And it was kind of like the same thing with The Undertaker. Like the Undertaker gimmick, folklore goes that it was supposed to be a 6-month thing and then Hogan beat him and then it would be done.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the plan with Kane, honestly. I think the plan with Kane was that he comes in, Taker beats him, and then he's out.
Mm-hmm.
But then they realized, holy shit.
Yeah, no, they realized that
no pun intended. No pun intended, but this thing's on fire, you know?
Right.
Like people like this shit. So then it's like, oh, where do we go now? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think if they knew it was going to be more than what it was, they would have had Taker beat him like he did at WrestleMania.
When as time went on, I mean, you got to think this. Undertaker and Kane's probably the longest story ever told in the history of wrestling.
Oh,
because
definitely.
those guys were intertwined for like 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
But as time went on, there were so many silly things they did, but there were also great things, like when Undertaker returned at WrestleMania 20. They would do things with Undertaker and Kane where they'd come back together, and then the Brothers of Destruction were cool. But if we're talking about just the Attitude Era, where they killed it for me was when they were like, oh, yeah, actually the Undertaker set the fire. And
right.
Like, that was Russo. That had Russo all over
Russo
it. Like,
took it over.
And it's like, fuck. That ruined it during the Attitude Era for me. But, they resurrected it and throughout their intertwining careers. And at times it became a captivating story again. You just had to forget that they ruined it by saying Undertaker burnt the house down. And WWE did too. After Russo left, they never mentioned that again. If you noticed. They were like, fuck that. He didn't burn the house down. Kane did.
The thing that made me love that storyline was, up until then, The Undertaker was The Undertaker. He was unstoppable. He was unbeatable. He was this monstrous zombie wizard, whatever you want to call him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when Kane got there, it forced The Undertaker to become humanized because he had a family now. He had a younger brother who he thought was dead. He had, Paul Bearer saying things about his family and showing their graves. But then it wasn't just he was The Undertaker anymore. He was Mark Calloway. Mm-hmm. He actually became a real person. And then as time went on, like they always say, he kept making that character different every time, but for the better. Right. You know what I mean? Like if Kane never showed up, we might have just had Dead Man Undertaker for 30 some odd years. Mm-hmm. Where with Kane coming in, we got Biker Undertaker, we got Cowboy Undertaker, we got, back to being the regular Undertaker. And up until just recently with the Hall of Fame, the WWE has always called them brothers. They have never been anything more than brothers. Where you look at other storylines like Edge and Christian, after a little while it became, they were just best friends who used to hang out and go to wrestling events together.
I have to tell you, Archie, WWE missed the opportunity for a great name there.
Cowboy Undertaker?
No, I had to write it down. Archie referred to Undertaker as a monstrous zombie wizard. That's
well, when you think about it, he was a dead,
I love that. I love it. It's the monstrous zombie wizard.
With his manager, the Yeti.
And I know what's other story you were going to mention, Aaron. It's probably the one that I have on my good list too.
Yeah. So it was just Vince and Austin.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Steve Austin and Vince McMahon's feud.
And see, I don't want to. I'll let you guys talk about it and expound on it some more. But that's why I was talking about the Attitude Era, starting with Brett pushing Vince on his ass.
Right.
Because honestly, they tried it with Brett before they fully went with it with Austin.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, Vince and Brett was the first time that I know of that Vince was somewhat acknowledged as like a boss.
Right.
And the first time, other than when he got hit with the chair in the Flair Piper thing, which was just was meant to be like a
fluke. Yeah.
A fluke. You know, it was the first time that a wrestler was going at Vince saying, you know, you're fucking me, which Brett didn't say that until he pushed him on his ass, obviously. But that, I feel like that's what they were somewhat going for then, and they just didn't completely do it. Right. But then they did with Steve, and it worked out better that way. Like, there's no way Brett versus Austin or Brett versus Vince would have been as fucking phenomenal as
no,
because Brett wouldn't have went that hard. Yeah, Brett wouldn't have went that hard. He would have been too relaxed and too, you know.
But yeah, Austin and Vince is.
And how many other things during that era spawned off of that feud?
Oh yeah,
you know, it's just,
they're still trying to recreate it to this day.
Like we've discussed in the past on this show, and just a comparison, it's like Tommy Dreamer and Raven in ECW. There were so many things so many other feuds and other personalities and other possibilities, the possibilities, baby, that came out of that, you know, and so much stuff spurned off of just Vince and Austin feuding with each other. Two guys would be involved in that thing, and then they wouldn't even be involved in that anymore. They'd be fighting each other. Like, we don't give a shit about Vince and Austin anymore.
Right.
And and I've said this plenty of times, and like I said, I'll let you guys talk about it some more. But one of my favorite things out of the Austin McMahon feud was the first time Vince takes a stunner in Madison Square Garden. He is fucking paralyzed.
Yep.
He takes the goddamn stunner, and he is on the ground, and he is done.
Okay, he was murdered.
Done.
Yeah.
Like, they're taking him out. Like, it's like the fucking Kennedy assassination. He's fucking done. But by like 99, he's like taking a stunner, and then he just pops up, and he's like, God damn it.
He developed an immunity, or sort of an immunity.
An immunity to the stunner. It's so fucking funny. And like, nobody wrote, I shouldn't say nobody wrote that. That storyline was written, but nobody wrote, oh, hey, Vince, you're going to go out and you're going to say this, this, and this. And Steve, you say this, this, and this. No. Vince McMahon and Steve Austin are the greatest combination of people ever. Like, Vince nobody needed to tell Steve and Vince what the fucking say.
And their reactions to each other, they are as good. And I'll just say it. Those two, in the history of entertainment, those two are as good together as they're like Abbott and Costello, the Marx Brothers, Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor. You guys get what I'm saying? Like, these two guys. Oh, yeah,
they work together perfectly.
These two guys went together, like Forrest Gump would say, like peas and carrots. Like, they just.
Peanut butter and jelly, man.
Yes. They were meant to work together for over a year, 2-3 years. They were meant to intertwine. They were meant to work together.
And then when it was all said and done, Steve stunned his entire fucking family. And that was like the best send off for the whole thing. It was fucking great.
I was only happy when he stunned Linda. She deserved more than that.
I mean, think of all the great moments that came out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking the concrete in the car, like when those windows blow up,
and Vince's reaction, or just Austin going, "You ain't got the balls to fire me. I got balls the size of grapefruits, pal." Like, just And then it became
when he kidnaps him.
And
When they're in that little
he has
room,
the
he
pop
kidnaps
gun.
him.
Yeah,
Like the pop gun's great because he pisses himself.
right.
But the best part of the pop, like the Bang 316, is everything leading up to it. Like when he's just
Oh yeah.
like when he
Shaquille
fired him.
O'Neal.
Yeah, what are you doing? The fuck out. And like Shaquille doesn't even leave.
Yeah.
He's like, fuck off, Vince. But when he's just in the room with that's even funny too because Steve got fired at that breakdown pay-per-view or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince is in his limo and he's like, this is mine now, mine or whatever. And then he shows up and he's got the firearm and the cops are like, oh, you're Steve Austin. You're cool, man. And then he ends up signing like autographs for his kids and the cops leave and Vince is like, what the hell was that? Like, and Patterson sees that Steve has a gun and he's just like, oh, I gotta go get you coffee.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go get you coffee. And then
Let me get
Briscoe's like,
Mr. McMahon his coffee.
Briscoe's like, I don't know where Pat's at with the coffee. And then he's gotta leave to go find Pat with the coffee. And Shane's just like, I got a match. I gotta go. And they're all just fucking abandoning him. It's fucking
in his wheelchair.
Yeah, he's in that fucking wheelchair. Oh man, that's one of the best fucking Raws ever.
What's next on your list?
I wrote Blurred Lines. This is one of my favorite things.
The Robin Thicke song?
No.
Oh.
It's a good song. And that video's awesome. This is those scantily clad women, which was something good about the Attitude Era as well.
Yes.
No defined baby faces or heels. Like everybody has an ulterior motive in what they're doing.
That would be on my bad list. Because I like my pro wrestling to have baby faces and heels. I like a tweener when they stand out. A tweener should stand out. Everybody shouldn't be a tweener. That's just my personal opinion. But that's one of the things that I had on my bad list of the Attitude Era was the shades of gray. Because it's okay for a character or two to be a shade of gray. But for everybody to be a shade of gray, this is where we get. I'll get into it later with the negatives. But I don't see eye to eye on that one. I like to find baby faces and heels in wrestling.
Well, while I agree with you, Nate, you are correct. The problem with the Attitude Era, and this is a bad part, is the fans were really dictating who they wanted to cheer for,
and they should.
But
that might. Oh, sorry, Archie.
No, but I mean, you look at a guy like Kurt Angle. He was meant to come in as a babyface. He was meant to be an American hero. And one weekend, they were booing the shit out of him. You know what I mean? Until he enjoyed the boos, and then they cheered for him. Mm-hmm. So the fans, I say this about the Daniel Bryan storylines, that they force him into title matches. And back then, and I'm guilty of it too, we all booed people we maybe shouldn't have booed, and we cheered people we shouldn't have cheered. And that maybe made Vince go, well, fuck it, let everybody do what they want.
And that's kind of what I was getting at with the Blurred Lines thing was, it's like, okay, and that's why I said defined, like not necessarily saying, okay, this guy's a bad guy, you gotta hate him. You know what I mean? Like in the 80s, and the 80s is great, like when they brought in the $1 Million Man, okay, which was a great gimmick. He was projected automatically as you're supposed to hate this guy.
Right.
That's what I was trying to say with like the blurred lines thing is where let's let the people decide whether or not this is a heel or a face. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like
right.
if you would look at the character of, say, The Godfather. Okay? The Godfather on the surface is a bad guy.
Right.
He's a pimp. Yeah.
It's a pimp. But let's let him go out there and everybody's like, hey, yeah. He's bringing out the big titties and
But
everything like that.
We love hoes. Yeah.
That was also that was also the United States in the late '90s. God, we were a horrible pillar of salt society.
Until those buildings came down, it was fucking debauchery, man.
Yeah, buddy.
But to Aaron's credit, he's right, because y'all remember the Al Snow Big Boss Man storyline?
Yep.
And
which was based on a Mr. Fuji rib, by the way.
Right. And then Boss Man feeds Al Snow his dog.
Mm-hmm.
And how much, I for one laughed hysterically at that and went, wow, that was awesome. When I shouldn't have, because he just fed a man his dog. You know what I mean?
Well,
that makes me a sick individual.
We won't get into it too deep, but let's be honest. Low key, the Big Boss Man heel in the WWF Attitude Era is one of the greatest heels of all time. It's a fucking prick. Like, he has no redeeming qualities whatsoever.
That was the one dude that had no blurred lines.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, he was a heel, but people were cheering for him.
No, they didn't, Arch.
Whenever it went,
you go back and watch it when it went when it hit, those people were like, "Boo!"
Yeah,
they fucking hated Ray Trailer.
My point is, though, he did a few things that, although on the surface were like cringeworthy, be like Big Show riding on his dad's coffin. You know what I mean? But there were. See what I mean? Look. That's exactly what Nate just did. Is what I did as a teenager. I went, "Oh God, what's going on here?" You know, it's like, and here's the thing: when they do a tribute to Ray Trailer, they always show that. Mm-hmm. Like, this is what his claim to fame. He made a guy ride off on his dad's coffin. You know what I mean? So,
what was next on your list, Aaron?
All right, this is my last best. Attitude Era. As the Three Faces of Foley.
I will agree with that.
That was a good burp, by the way.
That was like a Mick Foley burp. Good job.
Yeah, and you know what? And he's on this. I'll just go over one. One of the things that I have as one of the good things of the Attitude Era is the ascension of Austin, Rock, and Mick Foley. Agreed. So I'll just group it all together, but I'll say this. As far as Mick goes, at that time, and we talk about sometimes on the show how after he got his success and everything, Mick's a little full of himself, whatever, you know. He earned it. I mean, he earned it.
Exactly.
What his ascension to main event status and being one of the top guys in the business is one of those things in wrestling, like I always say, the thing that makes me smile the most in wrestling is to watch Eddie Guerrero, but to watch Mick Foley rise is also something that makes me smile, because did a guy ever work harder to get where he got? You know,
right.
In that era, I'm sure that fucking Harley Race worked super hard, but I'm just saying in that era of wrestling, to watch Mick rise up and become a main eventer against even the promoter that promoted him to the main event. When Vince McMahon first laid his eyes on Mick Foley,
that's like, what I was going to say.
Where does this fat slob work into my plans?
That's what I was going to say was he got, and people can say what they want to say about him, he got the biggest wrestling fan. He got over with the biggest wrestling fan in the world, Vince McMahon.
He was the guy that should have never gotten over with Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon told Jim Ross, "I'm going to let you hire Mick Foley so you can learn what it's like to be let down by people that you love."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then Mick Foley got himself so over that Vince McMahon was like, "Holy fuck. Where is this guy been?"
Yeah.
Right. And that's
this
the thing.
Flat ass, toothless
maniac
is fucking fantastic.
Right.
Yes.
And we talked about Vince and Austin. How great was Mick and Vince together?
It made Sacco.
Yeah.
It actually is the reason that he did the "This Is Your Life" with The Rock, because he brought that clown and all that to Vince first, and then reused it against with The Rock. So, yeah, it's what made the hardcore title, too. Vince gave it to Mankind. Mick Foley, to his credit, paid his dues for years before he even had to. Whether it was putting the ring together, whether it was driving to shows that he wasn't even on just to be there in case they needed somebody, sleeping in his car, not eating correctly, getting his ass beat by Vader all over the world, and Abdullah the Butcher and Van Hammer and everything in WCW. The torture he went through in ECW with Terry Funk and being burned. And then he gets to the WWF, and it's like he found the promised land. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like he was looking for the lost city of gold, and there it was. Because it all clicked.
And say everything you want to say about the talent of Dwayne Johnson, and I've said this plenty of times.
Oh, definitely.
That I think Dwayne Johnson is probably the most talented human being on the face of the planet. Because do I like all of his movies or anything? No. But that dude can do fucking anything that you want him to do.
Right.
But in the wrestling business, Dwayne Johnson wouldn't have become Dwayne Johnson without Mick Foley.
Mick helped to bring him out of his shell. I agree with you. I think Mick really, with all the jokes that he used to do with The Rock in the ring,
well, just allowed The Rock to putting the guy friendly. Over, man.
Right. Well, that too. Yeah.
Like within the wrestling business, The Rock would not be The Rock if Mankind wasn't there.
Nor Hunter.
I agree.
Mick made Hunter a bigger star than he could have ever imagined too.
And that's sorry, that's why I was going to say I have respect for Rock because Rock admits it. Hunter doesn't. Mm-mm. And I think that's wrong.
So, go ahead, Archie.
Well, no, just real quick. I made a statement to Mrs. Mitchell the other night. We were watching Raw, and she said, "Wow, Randy Orton got old." And I said, "Well, he's the last of his class that came in with John Cena, Brock Lesnar, Batista. It was those four guys coming in from OVW. In that same regard, Foley, Austin, Rock, and Triple H all came up at that same time. They were the main four. And those four guys, to their credit, made WWE in the Attitude Era, along with The Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, no discredit to them, and Bret Hart, but the established stars actually stood back and let these new up-and-comers take the flag and run with it, take the ball. And thank God that they did, because these guys really made WWF what it was during the Attitude Era. And if they weren't there, we were with the new generation. We were stuck with new generation and Mantar and TL Hopper. No disrespect to Tony Anthony, I happen to love him, but we were stuck with
the plumber gimmick.
Smoky Plug.
The plumber gimmick, not exactly flattering.
And then speaking of Orton, and then if you don't mind, we can maybe take a break.
Yeah,
cool. But speaking of Orton, and we're talking about Foley, how much does fucking Edge and Randy Orton owe to Mick Foley?
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
both of them.
Absolutely.
Both of them.
Both of them. And
Foley learned that from Terry Funk.
Terry Funk, yes.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I know we're getting into the weeds, but Foley is a guy that did he get full of his own shit for a little bit? Yeah. And that's fine. But Foley is a guy that doesn't, how do I want to say it? Like, yeah, he's like, I'm Mick Foley. I did this, this, and this. But he's not afraid to somewhat lose it to somebody else. That makes sense?
Yeah.
No,
like Steve Austin isn't gonna. If you would ask Steve Austin tomorrow, hey, show up at this independent show and put this guy over, he ain't gonna do it.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But you say, hey Mick,
Brock Lesnar.
Hey Mick, we got this guy that we want to do something with. Okay, I'll fucking lay down for him.
Yeah, I don't give a shit.
You know, that's how Terry Funk was. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And Mick learned that from Terry Funk because Terry Funk was willing to do that for him, and that's, like I said, it's out in the weeds. But that's same with Foley. That, and also like the fucking Dude Love character was awesome, and face Dude Love was fun, but heel Dude Love was the coolest, man. Heel Dude Love was fucking great.
Before we take a break, let me run down just real quick because I won't go into. I put the Ascension of Austin, Rock, and Mankind. We have dug into it. Austin McMahon.
Sorry, my list was too long. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I just have two because I had Austin, Rock, Mankind, their Ascension. Austin McMahon, yes. The promotions trying hard to keep fans was a great thing. So the two things, or actually, I guess the three things that I have that we can elaborate on just a little bit before we take our break, and then we'll come back with the negatives of the Attitude Era. The first thing that I have, not necessarily, and not that the later version was bad, but the original D-Generation X. Hunter, Sean, and Chyna. God damn, that was fun.
And Rick Rude.
And Rick Rude.
That was fun television, especially for that time, because like we've mentioned a couple of times before, this was something that we as wrestling fans back then, like we'd never seen anybody push the envelope like this. And yes, did Hunter and Sean shit on the business? Yeah, Jim Cornette, they did. But you know what? 16, 17-year-old me was laughing my fucking ass off because that was fun, man. It was fun.
Them playing strip poker in the middle of the match and fucking headbangers coming out. And they beat the headbangers up at the little poker table.
I did not sleep with that young intern. And as a matter of fact, we were up all night.
Yeah, that presidential address is gold.
And saying, like, between the hours of 9 and 10, we won't say shit.
Fuck.
Damn. Ass. Fuck.
Sean's like, God damn. I'm just like, watch your fucking mouth. And it's like, it was just, you know.
Oh, fuck me. Jesus.
Yeah.
Or how about this? Nobody knows Canada like I knows Canada. When he's like got the Canadian flag up his nose.
Brett even said that in that fucking sit down they did with Jim Ross. Brett was like, dude, they'll forgive you for screwing me in Canada, but they'll never forgive you for humping that flag. What was I just thinking about? Like when Sean put the gauze in his trunk, like put the gauze in his underwear and was like doing the suck it in Jim Ross's face. Mm-hmm. So it looked like he had big junk and he was like in JR's face. Yeah, the fucking DX, they were great. When Chyna got her breasts done or whatever, Sean was like, if I had a nipple for every nickel. Yeah. When fucking Shamrock puts Sean on Raw, puts Sean in the angle lock, and he has that fucking lollipop in his mouth the entire time. That is the biggest fuck you in the history of wrestling.
All right. The other two things that I have, one, and we kind of sort of elaborated on it with Mick and Triple H and Austin and Rock. The one thing the Attitude Era did well, and I will get into the undercards, some of the undercard stuff and what they did poorly in our next segment, but one thing that the Attitude Era did well, folks, you can never deny that as far as the top matches of that era, with your Austins and your Undertakers and your main events, they had epic main events during that era.
Oh yeah.
Like no matter how the other programs went on the undercard or whatever, man, the main event matches were always kick ass, nonstop.
They were can't miss. Miss.
Absolutely.
And if you did miss them or forgot to record Raw, you bitched and moaned. You were like, damn it, what happened?
Or some of those pay-per-view main events, man. Like WrestleMania 15 is my second least favorite WrestleMania. I don't like WrestleMania 15. To me, WrestleMania 15 is a 4-hour long Vince Russo fever dream. And it's not, to me, it's not WrestleMania quality until you get to that main event with Rock and Austin, and they bring the fucking house down.
And that what that was like I was saying with Vince Russo saying that he'd go to Vince's house and Vince would be like, "What's going on with Rock? What's going on with Austin? What's going on with Mick?" That was, and I wasn't there obviously, so I don't know, but I guarantee that was Vince McMahon saying, Russo, Ferrara, you guys can do whatever you want to do with this.
Right, but Austin and Rock
but it wasn't even his. He was saying, Vince,
let them do their thing.
Ed, you do what you want to do with that. Fucking Pat's booking the rest of Pat's booking.
Austin and Rock, yeah.
Yeah, Pat, that's Pat's. Say the fuck. Like, you can come up with how we get there, but Pat's going to finish it.
I have one more, and then we can take a break here. From the Attitude Era, another positive thing in the WWF, not since the mid, at least 80s, probably from let's say 98 until 2000 and late 2001, maybe WrestleMania 17. Let's say from 98 to WrestleMania 17, so about 3 years, the WWF had one of the best tag team rosters during the Attitude Era.
I agree with that.
You got the Dudleys, you got Edge and Christian, you got the New Age Outlaws, you got the Hardys, you've got APA, you've got Chuck and Billy. Fuck you if you don't like Chuck and Billy. That was a great tag team.
You missed one. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think the fucking Hollies were a great tag team.
Yeah,
they were.
They had the best tag team roster. Obviously, during that era, I think you can debate between. Even though I tend to lean toward the 80s roster with the Hart Foundation, Demolition, the Killer Bees, the Bolsheviks, the what have you, but that 90s, okay, in the Attitude Era, here's where the tag division was so important and so great. You had we just talked about those great main event matches. That tag division, that was where your innovation was coming from. You know what I mean? That was where those were guys that were elevating, those TLC matches and stuff. And we'll get into the negative of that in the next segment. But those were the guys that were elevating the business to what it was going to be in the next level.
If there's one thing I complain about nowadays, is too many multi-man matches, 6-man tag, 8-man tags, tag team turmoil matches with 17 tag teams running in. In the Attitude Era, it was a little more acceptable because you had good tag teams, and these matches would actually go 30 or 40 minutes because they allowed these guys to actually wrestle.
And they weren't on the weekly TV, and there weren't 4 on every card.
Right, exactly. And it was to get to a number one contenders match, not just because Drake Maverick pissed off the AOP. You know what I mean? Nowadays, it's not the same. Back then, it was, the Hollies want to be number one contender, but like you said, the Acolytes say they're going to be number one contender. But guess what? The Hardys won the TLC match, so they're going to. So, throw them all in one match. Let's see what happens.
Right. Yeah. And here comes Teddy Long.
But at least it made sense. There was continuity, and when they would get the number one contender, the other tag teams would fall in line, and then they would go after the belts afterwards. You didn't need another one the very next month and go, okay, now we need another number one contender. You had a number 1, number 2, number 5, number 7 contender.
Exactly.
Nowadays, it's like every week is, we need a new number one contender. We'll put 5 guys in a match. Let's see what happens. Why?
Aaron, anything from you on the tag division before we take a break?
No, I agree with you guys.
All right. Well, we will take our break here on the show. And when we return, we'll talk about the negatives of the Attitude Era here on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. We'll be right back after this.
Woo!
Well. You can't wrestle. So what did you do? You went out there and you started a podcast. You got that right. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. And I am Brian Pillman Jr. the We Can't Wrestle podcast is a podcast about wrestling and a bunch of guys that don't know how to do it. But I, Brian Pillman Jr., am very good at pro wrestling, so I don't need to start a podcast called the We Can't Wrestle podcast, but I'll gladly put my name on the brand. I'll gladly go on the line to say that the We Can't Wrestle podcast is one of the most informative, most balanced, non-biased podcasts out there. Thank you very much, and have a good listen.
All right, wrestling fans, welcome back to the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Really quick, before we get back into the Attitude Era, talk about the negative of the Attitude Era this week on the We Can't Wrestle podcast. Again, like I said at the beginning of the show, if you have not yet, please check out WrestleNet Radio. There are, and we are one of them, we are two of them, we are three of them. There are millions of wrestling podcasts out there. Everybody's got a wrestling. Every schlub in his basement with a microphone and a computer has a wrestling podcast. Now, will I say that they're better than this one? Probably not. But everybody's got a wrestling podcast. I don't think anybody, guys, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, is doing a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week online wrestling radio station. So, that being said, check out WrestleNet Radio. The Facebook page is live, and you can download the app in the Google Play Store. Also, Aaron, I know you have a vested interest in this one. Check out Reliving the Extreme with Aaron, myself, and Chad Austin as we are reliving ECW. Now, this week's Reliving the Extreme, for those listeners of We Can't Wrestle podcast, you may want to listen to it anyway. Aaron, here's what I've decided to do, because we're taking a 2-week hiatus from actually doing show reviews, as Aaron and I have both had some things in our shoot jobs going on the past week or so. And on May 16th, and by the way, Mazel Tov, Chad Austin will be getting married. So
congratulations, Chad.
We are taking a couple weeks off from doing reviews, but there will be shows. Now, this week's show is going to be the hour from last week's We Can't Wrestle podcast, where Aaron asked Chad and I questions. Because it was off the rails, it was funny, it was the three of us doing what we do, so that will be featured. So if you want to re-listen to that hour of last time around's We Can't Wrestle podcast, you can. For the listeners of the Reliving the Extreme that don't listen to their show, that'll be fun for them. Next week, and this is why it's next week, because I have to do some editing on this, I'm actually going to take some of our pre- and post-show conversations that we have and edit them up so you can hear some of the fun conversation we have off the air. For reliving. Oh, yeah, I'm going to edit, because there are some things that do not need to be heard by the public.
Nate will be thrown off the air. Don't do that.
So that'll be something.
It's because of all of Nate's racist, anti-Semitic comments that he says.
Mark for edit. All right. And also,
now I have a
ahead.
bone to pick with you, though.
Mm-hmm.
You said that there's somebody doing a podcast in their basement. I do mine in my attic, okay?
That's all right. And of course, we would be remiss.
You should call your show The Diary of Archie Mitchell.
No. No. It would sound better, The Diarrhea of the Mouth of Archie Mitchell.
Oh, frankly, I don't think we could do that one. But Archie also is along with me, an admin in the Asylum. Check out the asylumwrestlingstore.com. Big shows coming up. Lita
Kelly this week.
Yes, Kelly. Lita is coming up in the virtual asylum.
Eric Bischoff.
Lots of big name talent coming to the virtual asylum in the next few. Also, Kurt Angle is coming up.
Yes, he is.
Freaking Angle, people. You can meet Kurt Angle.
And there's been rumor that he might do this meet and greet with a broken freaking neck. So you never know.
And you can also purchase Cella toys on there, which I'm very excited about, because I actually just put the order in. I told David on Maximum Gold this week. I put the order in last week for my Dynamite Kid figure.
I got Dynamite the night it came out, and I got Hayabusa the night it came out. So
I'm very much looking forward to Bull Nakano, because I'm a big Bull Nakano fan, and there was never a female Hasbro. They never made a female Hasbro.
I agree. But my problem with it is, see, I probably won't get that one, Nate. To me, it looks like a Scott Steiner or a Mr. Perfect body with Bull Nakano's head on it. And I'm not saying
Wasn't that Bull Nakano?
I'm not saying that Bull Nakano had, she was muscular, she was a big woman, but I think they could have went a little more feminine with it because she did have some feminine features. I don't know. And for the first female figure, I maybe would have liked a Miss Elizabeth or a Sherry.
I'm just gonna.
Because it's me.
Are you saying they should have put it on a Bam Bam Bigelow?
No,
I'm gonna buy the Bull because I'm a fanboy. I really like Bull Nakano.
Oh, I love Bull Nakano.
Nakano. I like Bull Nakano. All right, Attitude Era. We are going to get to the nitty gritty of the negative of the Attitude Era, and once again, Aaron, in this segment, I will let your list guide us, and I'll knock stuff off of mine if I have bullet points that match yours or elaborate, etc., etc., etc.
Okay.
Before that, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say I didn't know I was fucking this dog on this situation. It was like your topic.
We're just holding it. We're just holding the head this time. But
okay.
Do you want me to go through really quick the people that commented on your post?
You want to?
On Facebook? Let's give the audience some participation.
Your show, bro.
You got two. Yes, you snagged two on this one. Nathan Roberts says the invasion angle. Nathan, you couldn't be more right. What a mismanaged deal that was.
Yeah.
During the Attitude Era.
Yeah, and that was kind of the end of the Attitude Era, honestly.
That's what killed it.
It could have continued it, but they didn't. So that would be on the worst.
Ryan Damon had a couple of comments. He said best Austin versus McMahon, which we discussed. And he said worst Austin saying what? That was fun at first. And it got tired.
And to this day, when I hear a crowd do the what chant, I cringe. Because it makes me want, and I know we haven't had crowds in the last year, but I'm talking about, past a year ago. Because that would make me wonder, does anybody know what they're actually chanting what for?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Or are they just doing what they're told?
And then he also popped me on this one. Ryan, you popped me on this one, Ryan Damon. He did say one of the worst was 3-minute matches, which that, I have kind of sort of have some of that on my list. But the one that popped me was he said best 3-minute test matches. So good on you, Ryan, for popping.
That hideous big boot.
Yeah. All right, Aaron, go ahead. Lead us through this.
All right. Worst things that came out of the Attitude Era. Multiple title changes.
Yes. I will agree with that.
Yeah, titles lost their luster during the Attitude Era. I would say, to be honest, and we're just talking WWF here because we're just talking WWF Attitude Era, the only title to me that did not lose its luster for some reason during that era, even though it changed more often than it had before, was the WWF World title. Like, that still always felt very important. And again, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about the main event matches being bomb and killer and awesome.
Right. And having such a stacked roster, it made sense that the title changed hands.
As a guy that prides myself on and Aaron knows this, as especially a WWF knowledge kind of historian, being able to say, on this pay-per-view or this Raw or whatever this happened, even I lose track of that fucking Intercontinental title during the Attitude.
Oh, God.
I'm like,
Oh, God.
I think it was Val, then the Godfather,
right?
Then Harvey Whippleman. I'm not sure. What the fuck is going on? But yeah.
Whoever's idea it was to put the Intercontinental title on Road Dogg Jesse James and the Hardcore title on Billy Gunn at the same time.
Ass backwards.
Shame on them.
And there you go for WrestleMania 15. But yes, I totally agree. Too many title changes during the Attitude Era.
Wasn't there a night where a title changed hands 3 times?
Probably.
It's
a prop, bro. It's a prop, bro.
Yeah. Poor Pat Patterson fought for it in Puerto Rico, or where was it? Was it Puerto Rico?
Rio de
Rio de
Janeiro.
Rio de Janeiro. Yes. I'm sorry.
Pat Patterson went to Puerto Rico for other reasons, Archie.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
And you don't even want to know why he went to Thailand.
Oh my!
No, well, because of the
Lady
never mind.
boys.
I won't even go into
Banana.
Remember the movie The Hangover Part 2?
You don't even want to know what Pat Patterson went into in Thailand.
Well, I heard he's the reason they called it Bangkok.
Oh. All right, we'll move along.
Yeah, we'll go on now. Thank you, Ryan, and thank you, Nathan, for your contributing
Absolutely.
to the
And
show.
Thank you, guys.
Can you imagine a plane ride with Jim Barnett and Pat Patterson to Thailand?
Oh God.
And thank you, Ryan.
Talk
and
about
Nathan.
a baloney blowout.
Thank you, Ryan and Nathan, for being loyal listeners of the show. I know those guys listen on a regular basis, and we appreciate you guys for your interaction. And we're sorry that you had to hear.
Oh, I'm sure they loved it. They're going to listen to it and be like, okay, good. They said something crazy because of what we brought up. Because if I remember correctly, it was Nathan Roberts that made us watch that WCW Nitro that spurned it's New York rules, bro.
I think it might have been.
I believe so, but I'm not sure.
What do you got next, Aaron?
This is the worst list, and it is that wins and losses don't matter.
Yeah. And there you go. I actually have on my list of bullet points of things that I don't like about the Attitude Era was it began the era of 50-50 booking. And this is where I'm going to get to my overarching story at the end. Not the overarching story, but the overarching story. 50-50 booking mainly because of the fact that they decided to get rid of enhancement matches, get rid of jobber matches.
Right.
Everybody on the show is a superstar with music, but they get diminished as a superstar when everybody's a superstar, if that makes sense.
Well, see, I agree with you there, Nate. But see, this is where I disagree with a lot of fans nowadays, and I would have fought on this point even back then. People think that just because a wrestler loses a match or two, that it automatically means they're being buried. No, if you go out and show that you can have a great 20 to 25 minute match with somebody, and you come out on the losing end, guess what? You showed us you're an athlete. You showed us you're a superstar. Mm-hmm. You may bounce back in a couple, 2-3 weeks and get a win, but that 50-50 booking made it that it really didn't matter who won or lost because, okay, Test beat Eddie Guerrero on SmackDown. Guerrero went and beat Test on Raw, but then Guerrero was in a match with Benoit on SmackDown the next week, so it didn't matter who won the rubber match.
Exactly. Yes,
you know?
and that's my point, that old man screaming at cloud. The Magic Man, John Majewski, would show me the two old guys in the balcony at the Muppets right now.
Right.
But that's where the Attitude Era, and that's why I say, and I guess I'll just get into it now. And Aaron, as we go on through your list, I'll elaborate more. Vince Russo won because I'm going to say it right now, and I don't think Archie might be the only one. Aaron's not going to. If David was here, he would probably disagree with me, or at least a little bit disagree. Okay. AEW is the afterbirth of the Attitude Era to the nth degree. As a wrestling promotion, guys, let's be honest. AEW is fucking terrible. It's terrible. Anybody that looks at I guess, Aaron, I'm just talking about the evolution of the business. Okay, WWE now, I'm kind of over it because it has eventually now evolved into what Vince always wanted it to be. He wanted his company to be a Fortune 500 mainstream entertainment company. That's what it is.
Yep.
Raw and SmackDown, I'm just resigned to what they are. But AEW was supposed to be different. Instead,
They're not.
It is the afterbirth of Vince Russo. And I know you don't watch it, Aaron, but what I'm saying is it is a halfway decent sports entertainment company. But anybody that could look me in the face and tell me that AEW is a good wrestling company,
No.
could probably pass a polygraph test, because it's fucking awful. It's awful.
This is where I'll disagree with you.
And I'm not
though.
saying it doesn't have its moments, and
Well,
it doesn't
no,
have
that's
its
right.
talent,
It has
but the
its
booking. No,
Can
go
I
ahead, Aaron.
expound on what I was going to on the topic that we're talking about?
But
The
this is
Attitude Era?
this is part of the topic, because
Okay.
this is where I'm getting with the Attitude
This
Era.
is where 50-50 booking got us.
Yes, it's
Okay,
awful.
Well, okay. Well, this is what I was going to say. Like, now, okay, I don't know all the players of the game, but who's the WWE champion is who? Bobby Lashley?
Yes,
Lashley on Raw and
Roman.
Roman on SmackDown. Yeah, almost
All right,
forgot.
let's just use Bobby Lashley. Okay, Bobby Lashley is going to wrestle Austin Theory.
Mhm.
Right.
Those are two people I know.
Right.
Austin Theory is going to wrestle Bobby Lashley for the WWF Championship on Raw this week. That could be a thing, right?
Right.
Okay. Imagine if you said, hey, on WWF's Saturday night's main event, Hulk Hogan is going to defend the WWF Championship against Barry Horowitz. Would you guys believe it?
No.
No,
Because
No,
Barry
I would not.
Horowitz is a fucking loser, right?
Well, not only that was not an enhancement talent that Hogan had to ever go through, so they wouldn't have ever.
But
yeah.
just listen, yeah, he's a loser. But then you say, hey, on WWF Saturday night's main event, Hulk Hogan, mind you, it's Saturday night's main event, it's not a pay-per-view. Hulk Hogan is going to defend the WWF Championship against Haku.
and I
Yes.
can believe that because
You can believe that because
because-
Haku had fucking victories on WWF superstars over people like Barry Horowitz and Dwayne Gill and
Israel
Russell
Mata.
Brooks. Yeah. Is what I'm saying makes sense? Is what I'm
dude,
saying?
no, you're saying the exact same thing we were saying. It's when everybody's a superstar,
Nobody matters.
and everybody can't be a superstar. You can have people rise above. Like, personally, I think, Brock Lesnar, or I even say to a certain extent, I would say Bobby Lashley or Drew McIntyre. Like, to me, those guys stick out, but they don't stick out like Hulk Hogan or Steve Austin or anybody like that came through an era where wrestling was booked like, again, and I know it's old man screaming at the clouds and blah blah blah, but baby faces and heels, superstars and jobbers, pro wrestling. That what we have now isn't pro wrestling, and that's why Vince Russo won, because Vince Russo's style, what he envisioned sports entertainment that's not fucking wrestling, but what he envisioned sports entertainment to be, actually won out in the long run, although it's not good. And let me just say for the record, AEW, WWE, whoever, they can brag about their viewership, but right now AEW has less viewers a week. They can say we had 1.2 million last week, but in 1991, 1.2 million people watched fucking Superstars of Wrestling.
Right.
So I don't want to hear about
morning.
I don't want to hear about your 1.2 million, you motherfuckers. But anyway, Aaron,
And
next
that-
on your list. Oh, go ahead.
and what we just talked about enters into my next thing on my list, and it is the Attitude Era brought the end of the squash match.
Yep, and that's what I just said. Yeah, absolutely.
Right, unless they're getting over a monster like Braun Strowman, or when Ryback was coming in, their squash matches were gone. I mean, unless they wanted Scotty Too Hotty to lose to, like Prince Albert, then it was a squash match because it
Well,
was
and
2 minutes long.
That wasn't even a squash match because they both had an entrance. I'm talking
Well,
about like
no, I know
Bob
what you
Cook.
mean.
I'm
Right.
talking about like Bob Cook and Rip Rogers. Not, I know Nate's gonna laugh because I said Rip Rogers, but you know what I'm saying. Like
No, I get what
these
you're
guys
saying.
stand like Rip Rogers and Bob Cook. Those guys are carpenters.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they're gonna lose, but they're gonna make the guy that's supposed to be the guy look fan fucking tastic.
Oh, of course.
Like if you don't have a Bob Cook out there with fucking Marcus Alexander goddamn Bagwell, Bagwell would be Marcus Bagwell. You know what I mean?
We talked about the positive things of the Attitude Era in the first segment, and folks, speaking of enhancement talent and how they can not only carpenters, but also it gave those guys a chance to learn how to work that might rise up. Like what is one of the more famous enhancement matches ever was when the British Bulldogs were in a tag team match against, was it Les Thornton?
Yeah,
teaming with Mick Foley.
Mick Foley.
Yeah, Mick Foley, fucking Dynamite Kid, almost took his fucking head off in that match. But you know what? A guy like Mick Foley learns something from that match. You go out, and you know what? For the first few years of your career, pal, you're probably going to lose. That's why. Let's run through some names here. Mason Ryan.
Right.
Give me some other ones. These guys that literally never had that experience. Like they were like 6 months in the business and they're on Monday Night Raw in a main event angle. You know, I'm just saying, like, as Tyler Rex.
What about Wade Barrett? Wade Barrett didn't have any exposure to.
Now, don't you shit on the good goddamn name of Wade Barrett.
No.
Yeah, Wade Barrett.
No.
I'm afraid I've got some bad news.
I
for
happen to
you,
love Wade
Archie
Barrett, and I
Mitchell.
think he is a fantastic commentator now. But they gave that young man way too much success too fast. Then they let him get shit on by John Cena and Randy Orton that he decided, you know what? I don't like this business anymore as a wrestler. I'm going to step out. So because they didn't let him go through enhancement talent and beat up jobbers for at least the first 2 or 3 months, and they had him immediately attacking John Cena on Raw with no end game planned, it cost him his career. And now he's a great commentator. I'm happy he's on NXT. I'm happy he was in the NWA for a little bit. But we missed out on a guy that could have been a world champion because Vince McMahon decided, you know what? We're going to let him get in there with the main eventers really quick. But then, you know what? John Cena's got to win. Randy Orton's got to win. The Undertaker's got to destroy him. You know what I mean? And I love The Undertaker, but he beat Bray Wyatt for no reason after losing to Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania. Why couldn't he put Bray Wyatt over?
Another victim of that 50-50 booking. Another victim of that 50-50 booking is Dolph Ziggler.
Yes. Win one, lose one.
And Aaron, you tell me if you think I'm wrong, but if you would have dropped Dolph, if he was not a baby, but if you would have dropped Dolph into say WCW in 1992, that guy would have been Dangerous Alliance, a fucking superstar.
He would have been stunning Steve Austin, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but because of 50-50 booking, he's been one of the most consistently best workers in the WWE for almost 20 years, but he's been booked into oblivion. Like it's almost sad. Like he's this fantastic talent that has been booked into oblivion, and he'll never achieve name status that he deserves.
And also, on how do I want to say this? Like, it's like, yeah, that happened to Dolph Ziggler, but Dolph Ziggler, when I was reading some stuff, he's like in the top 10 most paid guys in that company.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, why would he complain about it?
And I'm not, and that's what I'm getting at. It's like,
that is now, like, professional wrestlers now, I should say sports entertainers now, aren't more worried about their push. They're just worried about the amount of money they make. Does that make
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, no,
I
no,
don't want
I
to get
I
into
agree. I agree. But you look at a guy like Dolph Ziggler. Right now, they're setting him up to lose to Dominic and Rey Mysterio. Let's be honest. With what's
it.
been going on SmackDown, he is losing. Him and Bobby Roode lose every singles match or tag match to Dominic and Rey, and because they want to get the belts on the first father and son tag team of the modern era. In the same regard, though, if Dolph would have been in the Attitude Era, he probably would have been a pretty decent main eventer. You know, he wouldn't have been world champion
And
17
see,
times.
and see, that's okay. That's I got my thought back. Like if you were talking about Dolph Ziggler, and he's booked this way, booked that way, but he looks at, okay, I'm making this amount of money, because where the fuck else is Dolph Ziggler gonna go?
Well, right.
You know what I
He's
mean?
not going to go to Impact,
So,
and he's not
so
going to go
Vince
to.
McMahon looks at it as this guy is happy because he's making this amount of money,
Well, Dolph
and
has
Dolph
threatened to
Ziggler's
quit, though, a
looking at
couple
it,
times.
and Dolph Ziggler's looking at it as, I'm making this amount of money, I'm cool, you know. Whereas somebody like a Randy Savage, I'm not saying Dolph Ziggler's on Randy Savage's level. I'm just saying this: Randy Savage would look, and this is where the wins loss don't matter. Randy Savage in his era would look at, I'm losing every week on TV. Okay, eventually this company is going to have no use for me anymore,
Right.
and I'm going to have to go somewhere else. And that company is going to look at me as, you're the guy that lost every week on TV.
Well,
The fuck are we going to do with you?
I
Does that make
recently.
sense?
No, I agree
Yeah.
with you 100%. I recently listened to a shoot interview with one of the guys that I forgot who it was someone who got fired during the whole COVID crisis where they laid off 40 people. And he said the problem with the WWE is if you ask for your release and they grant it to you, you have to put in a 1 month notice before you can leave, And for that 1 month, they're going to job you out on television, hoping that you lose all credibility when you go to work to another company so that you won't make the same money, hoping you'll only sign a 1 year deal there and then come back to the WWE. People who haven't had that happen to them are guys like Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley, who are the main eventers on Raw right now. They both went to Impact after being in the independent scene for a little while. They made their money. They got bigger names. They became, bigger in other companies. And then Vince had to pay them more when they wanted to come back. So,
Next, Aaron, on your list.
The end of sports-based storytelling.
Damn. Our list on the bad is, here it is. And what I have written down is frantic stories.
expound what you mean by that. I need to.
Frantic
Well, okay.
storytelling. Oh, go ahead, Aaron.
Well, I was just going to say, like, the Attitude Era ended the Attitude Era ended sports-based storylines and storytelling, and like I put in in parentheses to kind of jog my memory on it, is like WrestleMania 12. Okay,
Right.
Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. It wasn't Bret and Shawn had this feud, and Shawn put his balls in Bret's wife's face,
Right.
These two guys were feuding, and they were feuding because they were going, I'm the best wrestler. No, I'm the best wrestler.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're going to go an hour. Well, I'm going to train this way. I'm going to train that way. And I don't hate this guy personally, but I think I'm a better wrestler than him. And we're going to go in here and we're going to have a wrestling match. And it's gonna be one-on-one, and who's the best of the best. It wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna hit this guy in the face with a chair, which is exciting. Don't get me wrong, but
Right.
that's what I'm getting at is that when the Attitude Era, like apex, it wasn't about that. If that makes sense, I didn't want to.
I agree, and I guess this comes back to my AEW is the afterbirth of the Attitude Era, because when I write frantic stories, I am it's a kind of a different approach, but I'm in the same wheelhouse as Aaron, in that if I'm looking at, and let's use Brett and Sean as an example, okay?
I did.
Always, I'm the best wrestler. I'm the best wrestler. No, I'm the best wrestler. Yeah, I may have a cockier attitude, or yeah, I may have a more, athletic approach to it, but I'm the best wrestler. And then these two guys, for like a 5-year period from 92 until Brett left the WWF in 97, who's the best wrestler? And it's always there in the background, and they're always competing, and it's about the championship, and it's about athleticism. Right. Whereas, and when I say frantic stories, and Archie will be able to attest to this more than Aaron will, because Aaron doesn't watch a lot of the modern product. Okay, AEW has existed for what, 2 years?
Going on 2 years.
Okay, in the grand scheme of things, tell me if I'm wrong, they have told 10 years worth of fucking stories in 2 years. They have feuds that they call blood feuds or hot rivalries, and they last a month and a half. Yes.
Not even 2 weeks.
MJF and Cody.
That was less than a month. That should have been 6 months worth of feud.
No, with a real wrestling booker, that would have lasted 2 years.
Right.
And that's what I'm saying. That's where
that's what bothers me. I said it during my first show on, WrestleNet Radio, that Cody has microwave feuds. It's every 2 to 3 weeks he's in with somebody new. First it was MJF. Oh, first it was Jericho. Then it was MJF. And then he moved on to Shaq. Now he's in with the other guy that was with QT Marshall.
And it's not just him either.
No, it's everybody. Bobby Lashley's going to finish with Drew McIntyre and Braun Strowman, and probably go on to somebody else, and it'll be for a month, and they'll move on.
There's a reason that although he is probably their best performer, okay? Mm-hmm. Excusez-moi. There is a reason that AEW is never going to make a dime with Adam Page. Right. And why? Why? Because they heat him up, and then they cool him off.
Yep.
And then they heat him up, and they cool him off, because they don't know how to tell a fucking story. And that's just it. Like Aaron said.
But see, that's what I don't get, though. You've got someone like Dustin and Cody Rhodes, whose dad was a booker, and they were both alive when their dad was a booker. It's not like Dustin stopped booking wrestling when they were born.
Brother
he was booking more.
I'm going to tell you this right now. Okay. Cody, and I know what you're getting at. Why don't they change this? First of all, Cody's cocky and arrogant like his dad. Right. And Cody's very much more, Cody's actually more his father than Dustin is.
I agree, yes.
So Cody's all about Cody. Whatever else is going on, he doesn't care. That's why he's doing what he's doing. Dustin, and I promise you, Dustin, being old school, is like, man, these checks are good. I'm just going to ride this pony till it dies.
No, exactly. He's happy being on television.
He's looking at Cody and saying, hey, man, you're fucking the dog. I'm just holding his head.
That's what but it's not just those two. Like, there are guys on that roster, like the Big Show, Paul White, who's been around wrestling now for almost 30 years.
Paul White, Christian,
Sting,
Chris Jericho.
DDP is in and out of that company and helps every now and then when need be. Jake Roberts, Arn Anderson, none of these guys can say, hey, kids, let us take the book and we'll handle it.
No. And before we'll jump back to our Attitude Era. But again, I think I've proven as I've guided this conversation is that it all Russo won, and that's AEW. That's the result. That was my point. But
No, I agree.
I just wish Arn would take his fake brother's lead and walk in the room and just go, stop it.
Right. Only used to do it.
And when they go, what? And he goes, all of it.
Right.
Just stop it.
But what I'm saying, guys, Anderson. Let me finish. Anderson, Roberts, Christian, Sting, Dustin. Who else did we mention? Jericho,
Tully Blanchard, Jericho.
Blanchard. Here's why that's not happening. Because those guys are pro wrestlers.
Mm-hmm.
They're not stupid.
They see a money mark.
They see a money mark.
Right.
Tony Khan, who doesn't know jack shit about pro wrestling. And they see, okay, this fucking idiot got a TV deal from these fucking idiots at TNT. They're all fucking idiots. None of them know anything about pro wrestling, but let's milk them for fucking lots of money until Vince McMahon puts them out of business too. That's
Right.
the reality of
Okay.
the situation.
Now, I agree with you. I understand exactly your point. But
And we
let's
get
look
to
at
like have a
history.
vacation in Florida.
But
Vince doesn't look at AEW as competition. Why? How do you know that? Because he let Chris Jericho talk about AEW
Right, on the
his
podcast.
network. He doesn't give a fuck about AEW. They're not a threat to him.
But hold on, though. I agree with everything you just said. I do. I am on board for everything you just said. TNT and Tony Khan are
AEW's
the
child's
dumb fucks.
play. There's
But-
child's play.
But let's look at history and let's not let it repeat itself. When WCW went out of business because of Vince McMahon, and Vince McMahon bought them, it took him forever to hire people from WCW that were actually mainstream, except for Booker T and Diamond Dallas Page.
Mhm.
Everybody else he took were the low-level B and C players.
Well, it's because they had Turner contract.
Yeah, but if he would have, but you mean to tell me if he would have told Goldberg, "Look, I'll pay you your Turner contract plus an extra $2 million to come work for me," he wouldn't have ran. Or if he would have told Flair or Hogan that, they wouldn't have ran. They came when their checks were finally, paid
No,
out
they
from
wouldn't have.
Turner.
The reason those guys didn't do it is because of what like Nate said, is they're workers, they're carnies.
Right, but
they weren't running to Vince because they didn't have to sign because they
Right, they had free money.
they didn't sign with WCW, they signed with Turner.
Right.
So Kevin Nash could have left millions of dollars on the table.
No, if I'm
and not
saying
had
if
to do
Vince wanted
anything?
to, if Vince wanted to, after the first couple months, he could have said, "Hey, Kevin, you still got $5 million left on your contract. I'll pay you $7 million. Come to work for me." And Kevin would have went. My point is, if it's all
I don't
about
think
the money,
Kevin would have. Kevin would have looked at it as I can work for Vince 325 days a year
when he
and
finally
make
went back, he
7,
didn't work that.
or I can make 5 and not do shit. Kevin Nash would have been like, fuck off.
Well, no, I understand what you're saying, but my point is, guys like Sting who know what it's like to forget about the contract. He went to TNA. They milked Dixie Carter for every dollar she had till that failed. Now they're in AEW. You've seen the writing on the wall before. You know what's going to happen at the end game. If Vince puts this company out of business, and now Impact, because Impact is now in bed with AEW because of all the crossover shit. So is New Japan. So is the NWA. So is Mexico. All these companies have come together to make a conglomerate to have company matches. That's great. I love it. I actually like that. It's a throwback to the old territory days. But if AEW goes out of business, this time around, when Vince puts them out of business, they won't be able to go to the WWE and get a paycheck again. They'll have nowhere to go. So if you ruin the company that's trying to be competition, is my point, this time around, you're not going to have Vince to fall back on later on when you decide, I'm done collecting my free money, I need to get some real money. And I'm not just talking about Arn Anderson and Sting, because they're past their prime. They're not going back to the WWE. They're going to retire and be done with wrestling if AEW comes to an end. But younger guys that want a job, like Ortiz and what is it? It's Ortiz.
No, not Hernandez.
Santana.
Santana and Ortiz and Sammy Guevara and Jack Swagger and Jericho again, because he's not leaving the wrestling business for a while. When these guys are going to want a job after AEW is done, and Vince looks at them and goes, "Fuck no! What are they going to do then?"
Yeah, because
help build.
Tony Khan was the once in a lifetime, once in a generation money mark they had, and they're spoiling it.
Right. Nate, if you would have came to me and said, "Come join We Can't Wrestle podcast," and all I would have done while I was on this show was just sat quiet and went, "Yep, I agree. Yeah, okay, whatever." And now I start my podcast or whatever, and I'm only promoting my stuff. And then you start WrestleNet Radio, and you're like, "No, I'm not going to bring Archie with me." I'd be up Shit's Creek. Now, I'm not saying I'm using you for anything, but if I would have been using you in that aspect, and I get left behind, now it's all for nothing. But because we all work together to build We Can't Wrestle podcast, you, me, Aaron, Kyle, David, Nate, Nick, John, Rajewski, we all work to put something together. Now we have this outlet to do something on and build on it because we all work together.
Right.
If you're not working together and it's all about the money, though, what happens when the boat sinks? Well, the Titanic. We all know how that story ended. I'm not going to be Leonardo DiCaprio holding on to the door. I'm telling you that much.
It's cold. It's so cold.
Aaron will be like, "No, there's no room on this door. Get off.
Get off. I don't know where the doorknob went. Get the fuck out of here." Aaron, what was next on your list?
Crash TV.
Oh God.
Yep.
Yeah.
Stupid. Here's my and this is where you'll see
this
what.
I'll let you speak, Nate. But this is where I was saying where, there was going to be something that contradicted, where I said everybody had something going on.
Mm-hmm.
Crash TV.
Listen to this. Yeah, listen to this. What I wrote down, and you'll say, "Yep." Stupid stuff like Terry's miscarriage.
Yeah.
There were multiple miscarriages in wrestling at that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stacy Keibler had one in WCW too.
Yeah, like who gives a shit? This is pro wrestling. And I know you have personal stories are one thing, Hulk Hogan, you got lust in your eyes. That's one thing. You know what I mean? But oh my God. And not only that, but Terry's miscarriage story. And I'm just using that one as one of 1,000 examples from this era.
Right.
That was it lasted like a week and a half, 2 weeks, and then it was gone. Like they didn't even. You have this a big what you're trying to portray as a big emotional storyline, and you spend all of 2 weeks on it.
And then she goes off and brings in Meat and Jacqueline, and they're pretty mean sisters. Like
Meat.
That's what needed. So let me get. That's what a miscarriage made you go and do. You know what I mean? Like wow. Jim Cornette said it best, though. When you do storylines like that, you alienate your fans.
Yes.
Because people who have been through that scenario and may have had a miscarriage or dealt with losing a child, then go and feel bad and are sitting there going, "Well, what is this funny? Is that supposed to be a joke?"
Yeah, you trivialized it.
Yeah,
you trivialized their trauma, and that's not cool either.
Right.
But yes, I absolutely agree.
And that's not just Russo's fault. Bischoff was doing it too in WCW because he wrote a book about it. Controversy creates cash. And Bischoff felt that, if he added just a little bit of drama into everything that didn't need it, it was going to make it big and boom. No, you are not going to get the same boom out of Hulk Hogan, You've Got Lust in Your Eyes in the 90s that you did in the 80s because it was different back then.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? You can't you can only catch lightning in a bottle once. It's not going to happen twice, you know? So.
Or like the only other one I'll bring up real quick is I call it Crash TV storyline. And it would have it what do I want to say? This has no the problem with it is it has no connotation in a wrestling storyline or an athletic competition. It would be that whole beaver cleavage, domestic abuse, that it was so lame. It was fucking lame. Let's be honest. I don't want to watch pro wrestling to watch something like that.
Right.
The epitome of Crash TV is I know you guys were talking about the beaver cleavage thing and all that. GTV.
Right. Never went anywhere.
GTV was Crash TV on fucking steroids. Like, they do these little fucking things that made no fucking sense, and then it was just done.
It was done before it even started. That was the whole thing about it.
Yeah, and Crash TV was entirely Vince Russo's mindset of, I have a fantastic idea. Let's do this with this guy. But what are you going to do after it? It doesn't matter.
I don't know.
Yeah. I've heard so many stories during shoot interviews with wrestlers, Jim Cornette, Paul Heyman, that Russo literally used to just doodle in a pad and go, okay, this is my idea. And then if you tried to read it yourself, you couldn't understand a damn word that he wrote down.
And that's what I think GTV was.
Yeah.
That's what the Crash TV mindset was. Like, these guys are going to have this altercation in this hallway or this restroom.
Right.
Well, okay, what are you going to do after that? It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. We'll figure it out next week. And then
they don't.
And you never heard about it. GTV disappeared faster than any other storyline I can remember in the Attitude Era because
they kept
had no
going
end
back
game.
to it.
Right. It would leave for 2 weeks and then pop back up, and you'd be like, okay, who's behind this? And then nothing. Which Vince Russo really messed up wrestling, whether he wants to admit it or not.
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Are you guys ready for it? Is Nate still around?
Nate, are you here? Nate?
I think Nate died.
Oh, no.
No.
It's Crash TV.
GGV. GGV.
Nate, where did you go?
I'm just listening to you two.
Oh. Mark for deletion. Mark for deletion.
So you were listening to
Val Venus and Big Show.
I thought you were listening to the song "One" or "Where the Streets Have No Name."
Lemon.
Achtung, baby.
What
you said you were listening to you two.
How many more do you have there, Buck?
I only have one more.
Okay.
And this is...
And I have one. I'm sure that I have one that I'm going to go on a rant on that you don't have on yours.
Right. This is my last one.
All right.
And then I'll let you do your rant, and I gotta pimp out after this.
Yeah, we got about 10 minutes left before...
Okay.
You're going to pimp out?
After... yeah. Like Charles Wright, motherfucker. And this is my absolute, and this is why I waited to say it, because this is my least favorite thing that's come out of the Attitude Vince Russo era. Are you ready?
Ready.
It's the worked shoot promo / program. Fucking hate it. I hate a work shoot promo program.
If done correctly, it can be good, but if done too much, then yeah, it's overused and it's convoluted.
I hate any type of angle where anything's projected as, oh, this shit's fake, but this guy made me mad. I fucking hate that.
All right.
Fucking hate it.
Guess what, guys?
It's either real or it's fake. Take your pick.
I was wrong.
What were you wrong about?
Aaron did scoop my heat. Because that was my answer. That was my last thing. There is nothing I hate more in, and I'm not going to call it pro wrestling, sports entertainment, than a work shoot. Because, like Aaron said or was alluding to, all right, Archie?
Yes.
If I'm watching pro wrestling,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to give you a match. Maybe something we've discussed.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm watching Stone Cold Steve Austin versus The Rock,
Right.
should I be watching this match thinking these are two guys that are athletes that are competing for a championship, and I'm going to suspend my belief and believe that these two guys that are athletes that are competing for this championship? Or should I think, boy, these are two guys that are pretty decent athletes, but this is all scripted, so none of it really matters. So why am I even invested in it? Why do I care? So flip the coin.
Right.
And we're all going to land on, for these 2 hours, I want to suspend my disbelief.
Right.
I keep saying disbelief. I mean belief. Suspend my belief that these two guys are competing for a championship and they're world-class athletes, and this is a match.
Right. Right.
However, let me just plunk this down. In the middle of this show, where I'm supposed to believe at the end of this show, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock are two athletes competing for a championship in an athletic competition that is no less athletic than the NFL or the UFC or a boxing match.
Right.
There's going to be a guy that comes out that says, I don't want to do this because I don't agree with the script.
Right.
And this is where work shoots are complete shit, because you cannot, you have one of two things. You have a work or you have a shoot.
Right.
You can't have a work shoot. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
It's garbage. When Goldberg, and this is where I brought WCW into the thing, the worst work shoot ever was that Goldberg garden.
That's the maddest I've ever been watching a wrestling show.
Yep.
Was Scott Hudson being like, I think he is, and I'm not saying I'm mad at Scott Hudson, because Scott Hudson was a good commentator.
In no way, ever, shape, or form on this show, other than the case of maybe like really bad workers, are we shitting on the workers. It's the writers, it's the script, it's the bookers.
Scott Hudson and Tony Schiavone have to sit there and be like, I think Goldberg has went away from the script. That's the biggest fucking
You guys
black
could say
eye
you're not,
in the history of professional wrestling. Ever.
You guys could say that you're not going to blame Scott Hudson, but Schiavone is the worst when it comes to talking about like a shoot and putting it over. And like you said, I think Goldberg
Schiavone was doing what he was doing.
Yeah, but
he was doing what he was told to do.
Okay, all right. CM Punk drops the pipe bomb promo. It's still to this day people question: was it planned? Was it not? Was it really a shoot? Was it work? And the announcers didn't say a word. The following week, when he came out and he had the bullhorn, that's when they finally said something. And they didn't say, I think CM Punk went off the script. They said CM Punk is disgruntled and he is letting out all of his anger at Vince McMahon and WWE.
Yes, and if you listen to the pipe bomb, he never once alludes to the fact that pro wrestling is fake.
Right. Right.
He's just alluding to the fact that WWE is putting their marketing machine behind John Cena,
Right. And that he
instead of
needs to go
him.
work somewhere else.
Whereas when you use the word script
Right.
on a pro wrestling program,
Now
you
this
just
is
shit on
fake.
it. Because
Right.
everything I've seen before that and everything I see after that,
It's fake now.
I no longer have to take it as a real competition.
Can you imagine if during a movie they did, like, you're watching, I don't know, I'm just going to throw out a movie, Ghostbusters, and all of a sudden Dan Aykroyd turns to the screen, to the camera, and goes, "I hate this script," and then they cut to another scene in the movie.
Yeah, or he's like, Slimer's just CGI.
Right.
Well, okay, let's put it into a wrestling aspect. We were talking about the greatest things in wrestling, or in the Attitude Era. Imagine if Steve Austin, would have walked out, looked at Vince McMahon and said, "Hey, Vince, I don't like the storyline you wrote for me.
Right.
So I'm going to beat you up now."
Right.
It wouldn't have fucking worked.
Or if tonight because he walked into the arena and they said, "Hey, by the way, tonight you're losing to Goldberg," he would have walked out to the ring and went, "Not Goldberg, you're losing to Brock Lesnar." He would have walked out to the ring and went, "I'm not losing to Brock Lesnar. You can't tell me that that's what the script says," and then walked out and didn't show his face for 6 months. What sense would that have made? You can't do that. The word script, fake, work, and shoot should never be uttered on a television screen during wrestling. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
He went off script. No, there is no script to me. I don't need to know there's a script. You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. And that's where we are in this day and age, that we've got guys that say that constantly. You know, the only one that I see that actually stays in character constantly anymore is MJF. Mm-hmm. Morning, noon, and night, that little son of a bitch is playing his part.
Even on his Twitter, even on his Facebook.
Twitter. Right.
And yeah,
even on Cameo. You know what he charges for Cameo?
$500.
Is it really $500? Is it really $500?
MJF will charge you $500 for a cameo,
and then probably tell you to go eat shit, because that's what the kind of guy he is. So you're spending $500 to hear your professional wrestler that you like tell you you're a punk, you're a bitch, you're this, you're that.
But yes, work shoots are the worst thing in the history of pro wrestling / sports entertainment, because the entire premise of the whole thing is that we are to suspend our belief that for these 2 hours, these guys are fighting as a sport for championships. And then, yeah, Aaron, you're absolutely right. I hate work shoots. Like, I never watched one and went, "Wow, that's intriguing. That's great television." Blah blah blah. Like, this is stupid. The words, "I want to see what's going to happen next," have never followed a work shoot. Mm-mm. I've always wondered, why the fuck did they do that?
I love a work. Like, I love a work, and I love a shoot.
But they did. The two shall not mix.
I love a work shoot.
Right?
No. You could give me 2 hours of not nowadays. I only watch 90 minutes. But you could give me 2 hours of Monday Night Raw. And then if you want to have as an option for me to watch on YouTube or something, an hour later, a show of those wrestlers or those performers talking about the show in a shoot form outside of the show, I'd be willing to accept that.
I don't know.
And that's not even what I'm saying with a shoot. Like, how do I want to say it? Like, I can watch a shoot on a wrestling show and know it's not a work, if that makes sense. Like, okay, I'll say it this way, and then I'll shut up. Like Roddy Piper, when Vince McMahon was making him work with Mr. T,
Right.
Roddy Piper wasn't doing a work shoot.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
No, everything he said was
Roddy
true.
Piper was
Exactly.
shooting on Mr. T.
Right.
Yeah.
Like he was like, "You're a nappy headed motherfucker," and you can edit out nappy headed motherfucker.
Yeah,
But,
Piper
like,
said it.
Yeah,
This is-
Piper
this is-
was shooting. Piper was shooting on the fact that he did not to work with Mr. T.
Right.
Like he wasn't like, "Oh, I like you, T. Let's go out there and work together, and I'm going to do like a work shoot with you." No, he was like, "Motherfucker, I hate your black ass. I don't want to work with you.
Mhm.
You're
I
a
don't
piece
care.
of shit,
I don't
and
care
I
if you
don't
love
like
your
you
mama.
being in my business." You know what I mean? Like he was shooting on Mr. T.
Yeah.
Like he should have. Like a wrestler should have. When
But
a boxer
fucking-
or a, when a boxer or an actor or another sport type, a football player, baseball player come into the wrestling ring and want to challenge a wrestler, they should be shooting on them because you don't belong in my world. The same way if Vince McMahon walked onto a baseball field and said, "I'm going to hit a home run," the pitcher should throw the ball directly at Vince McMahon's head, in my opinion, because you don't belong in my baseball diamond.
But like what you were talking about, Arch, like I was saying, like Piper was shooting on Mr.
He wasn't
T.
holding back. He wasn't holding back. And maybe at the end of WrestleMania, he said, "I'm sorry."
But when Roddy went to TNA and was cutting that promo on Vince Russo, he was work shooting on Vince Russo.
Right. They knew.
That's why I don't
Russo
like it.
knew exactly what he was going to say that night. Exactly.
The best example of working a shoot into a work is something Aaron alluded to earlier. And we'll wrap up on this because work shoots are garbage, all right? But I guess I'll say we'll reverse the word and say shoot work, all right? The best example of it is, and the best way it was ever done to me personally was the end of that cage match between Brett and Sid, because Brett let out his frustrations at the promotion,
Right.
stacking the odds against him as an athletic competitor. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this promotion's not letting me win. He's not saying the script is fucked up. He's not saying you're fucking me in the writing room, Vince. He's saying you're sending the Undertaker out here behind my back, or you're stacking the odds against me. That's the farthest you should ever go with something like that. Like I can understand an athlete and a promoter being at odds.
Oh, definitely.
But you drop the word script, you fucking lost me, buddy. You're done. We're done. I'm done.
I can't believe that you wrote me to lose this match.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, the end of that cage match on that Raw was probably the best of that type of thing ever done. It was written to, yes, cause some controversy, yes, to kind of bring up the backstage quote-unquote politics, et cetera, but you still had the air of this was still an athletic competition, but the wrestler thinks the promoter is trying to screw him over by sending other wrestlers out or stacking the odds against him. You know, it wasn't like we alluded to earlier with Goldberg and all that. I don't think Goldberg's going with the script here. At that moment, you fucking lost me. And you killed the fucking business. And now
it'd be like Al Pacino being mad at Francis Ford Coppola for booking the end of the movie because I'm gonna lose in the end.
Yeah. And that is where I'll say this, and we'll end on this. That is why I say to all the people that would comment on any of my posts that I just don't get Orange Cassidy. That I'm just past my prime. That I just don't understand modern, don't you dare fucking call it professional wrestling. That I just don't understand modern sports entertainment. Go fuck yourself, okay? Because if this was professional wrestling, it would be portrayed as a real fight. Wrong or right?
100% right.
No, like I don't know who was talking smack to you. I don't know who's talking smack to you, but if Orange Cassidy, the character, okay, if Orange Cassidy,
I'll never disparage Arn Cassidy. Arn Cassidy. I'll never disparage Orange Cassidy as a guy, as a person, because I don't fucking know him. He could be the nicest guy in the world, but he's not a professional wrestler. Because if you are going to tell me that this guy is going to stand there with his hands in his pockets, do a flip against, say, Pac. He's going to do a flip, and then Pac is going to sell that kick to the shins shit. That's not pro wrestling. You can argue with me till I am blue in the face or you are blue in the face that wrestling has evolved. That's not wrestling. It's fucking stupid.
I don't know how we got on this tangent. I was just going to say, if you take Orange Cassidy, as you called him, if he would take Orange Cassidy and say, hey, on AEW Dynamite tonight, we're going to watch Orange Cassidy versus Haku.
6 seconds.
Not even.
We're going to take Orange Cassidy tonight, and we're going to put him in a match with
Harley Race.
Oh, God. Poor Orange.
We're going to take a match tonight with who's the guy that's the teammate with Trent?
Chuck T?
Chuck Taylor. Mm-hmm. Tonight, Chuck Taylor is going to face
Kurt Angle.
Yeah, Kurt Angle. That's probably going to happen eventually.
Eventually, yes.
But we're going to take Chuck Taylor, and he's going to go one-on-one with
Brutus Beefcake.
No. It would be like if Chuck Taylor and Brutus Beefcake were going to wrestle each other. It would be like when Harpo Marx and Groucho Marx were doing the mirror thing. Like, it would be very similar. I was going to say it would be like Chuck Taylor tonight is going to face Stan Hansen.
Greg Valentine.
And Nate, you're going to be mad, but you're going to be able to agree with me. Okay, tonight Chuck Taylor is going to face Ronnie Garvin.
Yeah, fuck Chuck Taylor.
Ronnie Garvin. But Ronnie Garvin's going to fuck Chuck Taylor up.
But these are
men. They're men.
Listen.
These wrestlers now are not men.
Listen, Aaron. There is a distinct, and you'll know what I'm saying when I say this. There is an absolute, distinct, utter difference between my disdain for Ronnie Garvin and my disdain for Kenny Omega. Okay, because I don't like Ronnie Garvin. Like, he doesn't entertain me. He doesn't.
But he'll fuck you up.
Well, not just that, but I respect him. Like, I'm not a fan of his stuff, but I respect him. He was a badass professional wrestler. I will never. like, if somebody says to me, I'm a Ronnie Garvin fan, Nate, I'll be like, okay, I disagree, but I can see it. You know, like, that's cool. But if somebody says, I'm a Kenny Omega fan, Nate, I'll be like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Is that what you
That's
thought
all I'm
about me?
Yes.
The truth finally comes out.
I love you, Archie, but what
I
the
love
fuck
you
is
too.
wrong with you?
Hey, he had good matches with Okada, okay? It's not my fault.
Okada had good matches with him.
Yes.
You know how they said Flair could wrestle a broomstick?
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
So
Kenny
can
Omega
Okada.
actually...
Kenny Omega
actually
can
actually
sit on
wrestled a
one.
broomstick.
Okada can apparently wrestle a Swiffer mop because he did a great job carrying Kenny Omega to a few really good matches.
After this last couple of weeks of Dynamite, I have to say, Nate, I agree with you. Omega's matches have been horrible. He put on a good match with Rich Swann, but that was because of Rich Swann and Impact Wrestling. That had nothing to do with Kenny.
I knew that was going to happen when Kenny came to America.
Yeah.
Like,
did he smack that guy and then just be like, stop looking at me, Swan?
Rich Swann's really good, though.
Shampoo goes on first. Conditioner makes the hair look silky and smooth.
No, I agree. Rich Swann is really good, and I believe that Impact devalued their championship by allowing a non-company guy to come in and just beat the guy who's held the title for 6 months. It would have been better ending it in a disqualification or a count out or something, so he didn't have to lose the title. But that's fine. They want Kenny to hold all the titles, and when that blows up in their face, they won't know what to do. That's fine. I find it ironic, though, that Nick Aldis, the NWA World Heavyweight Champion, has gone on record to say, fuck no, I ain't going on to AEW or Impact Wrestling. I'm staying in the NWA.
Good for him.
Because he doesn't want to diminish the title.
He's a fucking man.
Nick Aldis
NWA, I'm going to say this, and then I got to check out.
We'll sign off when you're done.
All right, well, NWA is the best wrestling show on
Without
TV.
a doubt. Without a doubt.
I would say for me, it's it's NWA and NXT are the only two shows I watch in entirety every week. So
Exactly.
It's
NWA,
definitely
NXT, and MLW is slowly catching my interest again, and they just got to deal with Vice TV, so now that they're on actual television.
You know, it's funny because I watched MLW religiously for a while until the pandemic put them off, and I haven't I haven't really watched it since they came back up. So
it's been good. They're starting to tie in Lucha Underground though, and it's a little weird.
I don't like that idea.
Yeah, but I think it's going to add to the roster once they get on actual Vice TV. But it's just, my opinion is, if you want to keep me entertained for an hour, you can, because I have an hour, of paying attention. If you want me for 2 hours, then be like NXT and keep me invested. But if you're going to want me to sit there for 3 hours or 2 hours for bad television, guess what? I'm going to fast forward or I'm going to Hulu you, because I can't do it.
All right, guys. Well, we have summed up the Attitude Era, and I think I proved my point that Vince Russo won, and his garbage is what dominates most of television in wrestling nowadays. But that being said, Aaron, Archie, thank you for joining me once again this week.
Thank you for having us.
And everybody, we will see you again next time around for the We Can't Wrestle podcast, and check out WrestleNet Radio, because if you don't, you're missing out. We'll see you next week, everybody.
We Can't Wrestle Network.
WrestleNet Radio. Check it out.